Yes, sir. How are we doing this morning, Jack? Today,
Mac, I'm sure we're getting a lot of new young listeners with that music. I
hey, listen.
mean, we're showing we can relate to them.
Well, not only that, Jack. I mean, we music to me is a language that almost everybody can understand, and a good instrumental to open a show with. There's nothing better than that. So here we are. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on our Saturday update and debate special edition. And we're here to give you 2 hours of your sports fill, as you can see us live on Facebook at Mac Sports Facebook page, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Like, follow, and subscribe where you can. I'm Mac with my co-host Jack Hirsch, legendary sports writer, former president of the Boxing Writers Association. And today on the show, we have scheduled Dr. Paul Semendinger, and we'll see if he can make it in today for us. So first, Jack, let's go over the sports updates. A lot of sports yesterday, at least a lot of significant sports. In the NBA, the Heat cause and bring the Lakers to a Game 6, beating them 111-108. Jimmy Butler leads the way for the Heat with 35 points, 12 rebounds, and 11 assists, a triple-double. Duncan Robinson adds 26 points, and the Heat only played 7 players last night to force the 6th game. For the Lakers, LeBron has 40, Davis has 28, but besides Caldwell, Pope, the rest of the Lakers really didn't show up, Jack.
Well, unbelievable. Playing only 7 players in a championship series like that, that's unheard of. Absolutely unheard of. And I don't know when was the last time something like that happened. The Laker bench was useless. I mean, the Lakers may as well have only played, their best 7. I mean, the Laker bench shot 5 for 22. Were very, very ineffective. And we have a series here, but Jimmy Butler was phenomenal, as was LeBron James. But you just kind of wonder, at some point, is Jimmy Butler going to run out of gas? There are a couple of games to go, and his effort's been absolutely heroic. And the Heat keep pushing. And guess what? We're now late in the series.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the Laker coronation not only got delayed, but only 2 games to go. And I couldn't help but think, as the Lakers walk back to their locker room, the margin of error has just about disappeared. Their cushion, I should say, has just about disappeared. If they lose the next game, they no longer have an advantage. It's all even. It's down to a 7th game. So even though psychologically the Lakers might be thinking, we might be thinking they're really in command, they could wrap this thing up Game 6. They're still in good shape. Game 6 is nearly a must game for them all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the strategy that the Heat can use in the next 2 games. LeBron's going to get his points. Davis is going to get his points. I mean, together, if they get 50 apiece, that's only 100 points. So, I mean, maybe they got to lock down. Bother Dave. Don't just let them do anything they want, but kind of lock down the rest of the team and just concentrate on playing their best players. I would imagine that will take its toll on the Heat somewhat. But, I mean, it's the championship. You got to do what you got to do to win, Jack.
Well, Jimmy Butler played 47 out of the 48 minutes.
Right.
I mean, you get this late in the series, there's no doubt that he's willing to stay on the court that long. But how effective can you be? Because when you're pushing all out all game, you're going to hit a point of exhaustion. You're going to hit a wall sooner or later. It's normally going to happen towards the end of the game. But we'll see what happens from this point. And Anthony Davis is starting to get banged up a little. It's getting really physical for him out there. So you kind of wonder, is he hurting a little bit too? But the Laker bench is going to have to step up. If they play the way they did yesterday, believe me, they're far from a lock, the Lakers, at this point. I mean, we thought when they went up 3-1, that's it. The Heat won 1 game. The Heat's going to compete in Game 5. They're going to give the Lakers a hard time. and the Heat jumped off to that lead, which they seemed to hold a good part of the game. And then when the Lakers finally forged ahead, you thought this was it. The Lakers put their foot on the accelerator and they're on their way to the championship. And it's been fun. And we're waiting for the coronation that might never come for at least the Lakers.
Yeah, the finals has become very interesting now, and I still think the Lakers win it, Jack. But hats off to the Miami Heat for pressing them into a Game 6. As you said, this was supposed to be almost a gimme for the Lakers, and it's far from that now. In the French Open semifinals, Djokovic gets by Tsitsipas in 5, and he will face Nadal, who won in 3 straight sets over Schwartzman to set up a final between Nadal and Djokovic. And what do you think about this finals coming up, Jack? Who do you got and why?
Nadal. Nadal is the king of clay, the absolute king of the French Open. Djokovic has been hurting a bit. He struggled to get to the finals in the 5-setter. He went up 2-0, and then he lost the next couple of sets before rallying in the 5th. Nadal is primed for this. Nadal's going to win. Nadal's going to win yet another French Open, which is going to be his 20th major, which is going to equal Roger Federer. And in the eyes of many, put him in the number 1 position as the greatest tennis player of all time, even though I still favor Federer based on the amount of times he's gotten to the finals. It was like those old Yankee teams that would get to the World Series and lose, and they would still be considered a dynasty despite not winning a championship, just because they were getting to the World Series year after year. But on clay, at the French Open, Nadal, without question, is the greatest French Open player of all time. He's going to prove it again against Djokovic.
Yeah, I think that the worldwide, they pay attention to tennis a lot more than the United States now, because we really don't have a male tennis player that can get into the discussion with the Nadals and the Federers. And until that happens, Jack, I don't see tennis becoming, very popular again. And, every country is somewhat selfish with their players and their sports. And until we get that American male up in there competing with these.
I don't know. I think we've adopted them. As long as Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer are playing against one another, we really look forward to the match here in America, even though none of them are Americans, because they've competed on our soil so much. They've been on top so long, and it seems like they're always playing one another in the finals, at least the semifinals. The good old days, obviously, were McEnroe and Connors.
Sure.
Not just the top level Americans, playing the best 2 in the world at the time, along with Bjorn Borg from Sweden. But McEnroe and Connors, the way they would go at it, the personalities, it made for fun watching.
Sure.
The 2 of them would jaw at one another. And we don't quite get that with the big 3, with Federer, who's basically on the way out now. He's soon going to be 40, and he's coming off a knee injury. And Nadal and Djokovic are respectful towards one another. But when those guys eventually retire, we don't know who's going to come along, and the whole sport of tennis might take a big hit.
That's a very good points, Jack. So let's get into the Major League Baseball. The Rays win 2-1 over the Yankees. Runs all on home runs, won by Aaron Judge for the Yankees anyway. The Yankees could only manage 3 hits against the Rays pitchers, who were rotated in and out through the game. Derek Cole went 5 in a 3rd innings, giving up that only 1 hit, which was a home run. And closer Chapman gives up the game-winning home run to I think it's Basso, if I'm saying it right.
Mike
Yes, and Austin Meadows had the other home run for the Rays. Cole pitched well enough to win. The Yankees bats just couldn't get it together. The Rays, with a good strategy, bringing in their best for a couple innings or a few innings, each one of them, all throwing hard and kind of kept the Yankees at bay. Jack, I've harped on this all year, and the Yankees we knew had power going in, and it still seems to me that in a lot of cases, they're trying to drive the ball either to the wall or over the wall. There were some chances that the Yankees had with the shift. I'm speaking specifically a couple times with Aaron Hicks batting lefty. The shift is on. There's nobody down the third baseline. He lays down a bunt. He's got good speed. He lays it down the third base line, and he's on first. And games like this, where we know during the year and in some games during the playoffs, home runs matter a lot. But base runners are the key to scoring, of course. And if you can't get anybody on base, you can't score. And I really think that there has to be some kind of rebirth of old school baseball where when you're up in a certain position, you got to get on base. Brett Gardner had an opportunity too. He was up. He did get one base hit, but he struck out a couple times.
He walked.
Yeah, he did walk too, and he did strike out.
No, he didn't get a hit yesterday. He walked.
Oh, I thought he won. I thought he won 1 for 3. My bad. But he did get on base on a walk, and he had a couple opportunities to bunt also, and he's got good speed. And I don't know why they don't take advantage of that. I don't know if it's just the way baseball is today. I saw the Dodgers put on a hitting display in their last game, winning. I don't know how many base hits they had, but they had a lot of base hits, and that's a power team also. So I'm not saying that the Yankees. We both predicted the Rays to win the series, but I think the Yankees had their opportunities to get people on base, and they didn't take advantage of it, Jack.
Well, I mean, there was frustrating segments during the game. In the ninth inning, the Yankees are down 1 run. You're talking about small ball. At that point, you have Stanton and Voit coming to the plate as your first 2 hitters. And even though you just want to get a man on base, obviously, when you have Stanton and Voit and you're 1 run down, you're thinking of the lightning bolt before you're thinking of just, a bunt, a ground ball, base hit, or whatever. And Stanton took 3 pitches.
Right.
Bat never left his shoulder. Now, the first pitch was low, should have been called a ball. But the next 2 were legitimately over the plate, and they were breaking balls. And Stanton was completely muzzled, which really should send out a signal to the rest of the major league pitchers who are going to face him. Just don't throw Stanton fastballs, because that's what he's basically was feasting off in his historic, playoff run of home runs. And then Luke Voit came up next, led the major league in homers. And like you're saying, he seemed to be swinging for the fences, but he also looked terrible, at that at bat. And then, of course, Urshela hit a line drive to third base, had a little bad luck. Had it gone down the line, it would have been a double, and the Yankees, would have had a shot. But I think they did put on some pressure. In the first inning, Choi, the Tampa Bay first baseman, made a couple of great plays on, rushed throws from the infield. One was in the dirt. The other, was wide that he stretched out for. So I think the Yankees were putting on a little pressure in the beginning. But I think the key to the game was, you wanted Cole to go as long as possible into the game. And the formula at the end, the Yankees used the only 3 pitches they wanted to use. Cole to Britton to Chapman. But in the first inning, Cole's pitch count was in the high 20s. I believe it was 28. Too many pitches in the first inning. So right there, you knew 6 innings was probably going to be his maximum, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
And as it turned out, he actually had a no-hitter going, despite struggling and leaving the bases loaded in the first inning, walking a couple of batters, hitting Randy Arozarena with a pitch. And I kind of had to laugh in the first inning when Randy Arozarena got hit with that pitch. It looked like he was going to charge the mound. And I'm thinking, is this guy stupid or something? It's the first inning of a deciding game. There's a man on first base. There's 1 out. Is Cole going to want to hit you to put runners on first and second and then have Choi, who's own Cole, basically? He's coming up next. Do you think Cole is going to want to hit you and face his nemesis with 2 men on base and 1 out?
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane, and it would have been interesting if Arozarena would have rushed the mound and had Cole gotten kicked out of the game. that would have been beyond ridiculous. So you
Yeah.
kind of wonder. But listen, when the game was over, Tampa Bay, and I didn't like this, and I think the commissioner should be involved. They were kind of mocking the Yankees by playing the Sinatra New York music. In all fairness, though, when you throw near a guy's head, I'm a Yankee fan. I can't condone what Chapman did. Was Chapman trying earlier this year to hit Mike Brazeau in the head? He says he wasn't. I believe him. Do I think he was throwing near his head intentionally? Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, that's more than a 3-game suspension. You throw near a guy's head, you send out a message if you're the commissioner, you suspend the guy for 25 games. I mean, show them you mean business, that pitches throwing at a guy's head isn't going to be tolerated. And let's go a step further. If a pitcher just has his control isn't good enough and he's going near the head, he has no business being on the mound.
Okay? Yeah, I mean, I definitely see your point there. There's nothing more scary than somebody getting hit in the head with, especially with any baseball, never mind being thrown over 100 miles an hour. I agree with you to a point. I don't know if a 25-game suspension would be warranted or not. I think you got to hit them in the Yankees. You would have to hit them maybe in the pocketbook a little bit more than they do. And
why should you, if you're Hal Steinbrenner, why should you pay if one of your pitchers on an impulse or whatever is throwing towards a guy's head?
Well, the reason
the guy who actually throws near the head.
I understand what you're saying, but I also think that you've got to send a message out not only to the pitcher but to the organization saying we're not going to tolerate it, and you shouldn't be tolerating it, and take some action in-house on that. And that's all I'm saying, Jack.
Okay, but
that's
forget Mac. Billy Martin, before he became manager of the New York Yankees, he came to the Yankees in midseason in 1975. But before he was manager of the Yankees, people forget he was a manager of the Texas Rangers. Right. One of the players on his roster was an outfielder named Billy Sample, who, for whatever reason, they didn't get along. I mean, a lot of people didn't get along with Billy Martin, but he was one of them. So now Billy Martin's manager of the Yankees when Goose Gossage is on the Yankees later on. And Billy Martin instructed Goose Gossage, who was a flamethrower in the mold of Chapman, hit Billy Sample in the head.
Right.
Billy Martin told him to do it. Goose Gossage refused. He didn't do it. Goose Gossage is the one who told this story later on. Right. He didn't want to hit the guy in the head. He knew how dangerous it was and so on. And I played baseball. You played baseball. I never played baseball on this level where someone could throw, in the mid-90s to even over 100 the way Chapman can. It is darn dangerous.
Yeah.
That would scare. I mean, that is life-threatening there. I mean, you can't fool around with that. I
know, Jack. Some players that have been hit in the head don't recover. There's some players that after they get hit, for some reason or another, whether it's because they're squeamish or just scared, they don't recover for their career and they end up leaving baseball. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think. I don't know if 25 games is the right number or not. I mean, it sounds great to me, but I do believe that they have to send a message not only to that player, but to the coach and the GM and the owner saying, hey, listen, your players aren't going to do this kind of stuff, or we're going to also hold you responsible.
Well, Mike Brazeau was very classy yesterday after the game. He said it wasn't about revenge. We moved on. We had put that behind us. Obviously, they didn't, but I noticed when Mike Brazeau was up before hitting the home run against Chapman, that was a great at-bat. He fouled off a lot of pitches. He stayed alive, okay? Right. And Chapman just couldn't close him out, kept foul ball after foul ball, but it looked like Mike Brazeau was bailing out a little. He wasn't crowding the plate.
Right.
He seemed to be off the plate. So even on the outside pitches, he'd just get a piece of. And finally, he got his pitch. So, in a way, even being a Yankee fan, I hated to see it because I'm a Yankee fan, Tampa to go ahead. But in a way, it was poetic justice when the ball is whizzing by your head. And now, you hit the ultimate home run off the guy.
Yeah.
Chapman now, I'm a little concerned. You know, he's going to, if he doesn't have it already, he has a reputation. As great a relief pitcher as he is, he's given up a lot of big home runs. He's given
Yeah.
up this one that basically ended the Yankees season, even though it wasn't a walk-off homer. He gave up last year's walk-off homer to Altuve. We could talk all we want about whether Altuve knew what was coming or not. And in the World Series, when he was with the Cubs, in that game 7, he gave up a big home run, late for Cleveland to tie the game up, but the Cubs ultimately won that game. So Chapman, does have that little lull in those big spots.
Right.
He's under contract for the Yankees next year. He's a free agent after next year. And the Yankees obviously will be glad for him to come back as the closer because he is, highly effective.
Sure.
He does give up, in big spots. He has been known to falter, occasionally.
Right. And yeah, I think it's a big decision. I mean, there are other relievers out there, Jack. We have one in the bullpen, Britton, who was a great closer in his own right also. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of decisions, I think, coming up next year with the Yankees. And I think the catcher situation, a couple of whether Brett Gardner's around or do they promote Clint Frazier into left field. I mean, another maybe pitcher for the rotation. I mean, they got
some things, Mac, you're talking next year.
Yeah.
I think last night's game, it was revealing. You mentioned Clint Frazier. Clint Frazier didn't get into the game.
Yeah.
In a game where the Yankees badly needed hitting, his bat was on the bench all game.
Right.
And I'm not making too much out of this. It was a little bit annoying, but I'm not making much out of this. You'd see very late in the game, the Yankee bench looking out onto the field. They were all serious. Some of them were talking to one another. And a couple of different shots of the Yankee dugout, you see Clint Frazier laughing and giggling.
Yeah.
He's the only one laughing and giggling. Now, I know someone could be very serious and they could have a smile on their face, and it gives a false impression, a very false impression. In fact, many years ago, I'm going back decades, the New York Rangers had a player, Vic Hatfield, and at the end of a Ranger playoff loss in the deciding game, he was sent to the penalty box, and the camera went on, and he was smiling. So I know a lot of it is an act for the camera. Even the great Johnny Bench was caught on camera. When the Cincinnati Reds lost the playoff game, Johnny Bench was laughing in the dugout. And as soon as Johnny Bench saw the camera turn on him, the smile left Johnny Bench's face and he shook his head like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he was all upset.
Sure. I mean, listen, Jack, I agree that you shouldn't be laughing and giggling. And I know a lot of people react to certain things certain ways, whether it's sometimes people even have a nervous laugh. But in that situation, I mean, you should be up there at least paying attention and seeing what's going on and rooting for your team. And I don't know, maybe there's something more to it than what we know. But the Yankees lose 2-1. They gave the Rays a good game as far as the pitching went. Again, I think that there was some spots where they could have done a couple things with a little bit of speed they have and maybe playing a little bit more old school baseball. But the Rays we both thought would go on and play. And so we got some pretty good matchups starting tomorrow. I guess the Astros and the Rays go right to work, where the National League starts off Monday. So
Rays are going to sweep them or lose one game at most. Maybe Houston wins the first game. The Rays win the next 4. Rays are headed to the World Series. And the painful thing about it is the Yankees would have beaten the Astros and they would have been in the World Series. But I don't think anyone's beating the Dodgers. You were going to get that next.
So you don't think that Atlanta has a chance, even an outside chance with their pitching?
Outside chance. Atlanta will extend them. It'll go 6 games. So Atlanta will extend them. They'll win a couple of games. Atlanta's pitching has been phenomenal in these playoffs so far. But something about this Dodger team, they are good.
Oh,
They are
there's no,
really, really
there's
good. They
there's
remind
no
me of the
doubt.
1998 New York Yankees in a sense that even when a team like that hits a slump, their talent can kind of override it and allow them to survive the rough patches.
Yeah,
And but if the Dodgers lose this year, they don't win the World Series. It's wow. I mean, they haven't won since 1988, and
right.
you know so many of these teams, Mac, are really hungry for World Series because it's been so long. Not for the Astros; they were recent World Series winner, but the Tampa Bay Rays were never World Series winners in their
Right.
franchise history. The last time the Atlanta Braves won a World Series, I believe, was 1995 with that great team, Smoltz, Maddox,
Glavine.
Glavine.
Yeah.
In the Dodgers, the last time they won it was 1988. So
Right.
these franchises, as long as Houston doesn't win it, it's great for baseball, and it's kind of been so long for the other three. And in the case of the Rays, it's really never happened.
Right. I mean, listen, Jack. I really believe that the Yankees will be making some changes next year. I believe that I'm going to go opposite you. I'm just to go out on a limb and to make a couple predictions that are outlandish, so I can say later, hey, look, I picked that. I like the Braves' chances. I think their pitching staff is strong. I think that if there's anything that stops good hitting is good pitching. And I'm going to go with the Astros. I think the Astros have that swagger that the Rays are trying to have. I think the Rays maybe on paper maybe are better than the Astros, but I like their little team there, and I like the way that they took all that bruising from last year's cheating scandal,
And
and
the Dodgers pitching is as good as the Braves
yes,
pitching. I mean,
yes,
the Braves have been lights out in the playoffs so far. But
yes,
let's be honest about it. They played the Marlins last series. And the
right,
Marlins a great Cinderella story, but they came back down to earth
yes,
basically as being a young team that overachieved.
yes,
Okay, and I mean the Dodgers are so primed in their position players, with Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, and so on.
yeah.
I mean, I like their team from the beginning of the season, and it just seems something about this Dodger team that seems unstoppable to me this year.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, Jack. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to root for the Braves this year. I'm looking for the underdogs, and anytime that I don't have a team in the mix, anytime they're, my Yankees are out or the Mets are out or a local team is out, I go
A
right for the
local team
underdog.
is
You know what I
out.
mean?
They extended the playoffs for the Mets. I mean, extended the amount of playoff teams and the Mets exited. The funny thing
Yeah,
about it, last year, the Mets won 86 games. They
yeah,
came one slot away from making the playoffs,
yeah.
meaning had they had the same format, the Mets would have been in the playoffs last year.
Very true, very
And
true. But like I say, Jack,
the Mets remind me now,
I
right this moment, when I was a Giant fan. I mean, I'm a Jet fan, but when the Giants won the Super Bowl, you could go into like Modell's at Dick's Sporting Goods, and you could buy all the Jet jerseys or whatever you want at a nice
yeah.
price. I mean, it's not quite that bad because the Yankees aren't there, but it's
Yeah,
kind of a lull right
I
now.
mean, when the locals aren't there, Jack, I always go for the underdog. I don't know why. I mean, I'm just that way. I love to see somebody coming, that's not predicted to win, and that everybody says can't win, and there's no way to win. I mean, I would love to see Miami Heat beat the Lakers. Don't think it's going to happen, but I'm rooting hard for them, Jack. So let's get to our debates. Let's start that off. We're going to go with the greatest wide receiver for the locals, and that includes all New York teams: Buffalo, Jets, Giants, and that includes the Patriots and the Eagles. So we got a big range to pick our picks from. I'm going to let you go first and let you give me your greatest wide receiver of the local teams.
Okay, if you want a story of never give up, you just don't look any further than Don Maynard. Now, in 1958, Don Maynard was a member of the New York Giants, New York Football Giants. And that particular year, the Giants lost in the championship game to the Baltimore Colts in overtime. And that's generally considered by historians to be the greatest game in NFL history. Because in 1958, television was still in its kind of early stages. Not all homes had TV sets. But that game was on TV, and it introduced the United States really to big-time championship football. And Johnny Unitas drove the Colts down the field for a tying field goal, and then they got a touchdown in overtime to beat the Giants. Now, sitting on the bench for the most part for the New York Giants was a wide receiver named Don Maynard, okay? And Don Maynard was so lightly regarded, he hardly got into the game. The next season, 1959, Don Maynard was cut from the Giants. They didn't even think he was good enough to be on the team. He had to play in the Canadian Football League. Another NFL team wouldn't even pick him up. And this kind of shocks me a little bit because Vince Lombardi was his offensive coordinator with the Giants. And you would think Vince Lombardi would notice his talent in practice and bring him onto the Green Bay Packers. But that didn't happen. So 1960, unable to make an NFL team, Don Maynard looked towards the AFL, American Football League, and he hooked on with the New York Titans. Now, if you want to know who the New York Titans are, they're formerly the New York Jets. Eventually, they had the name change from New York Titans to New York Jets. And he became a wide receiver, and he took off. For the next 13 years, Don Maynard forged a Hall of Fame career in which he was ultimately inducted in 1987. He's the New York Jet franchise leader with 627 receptions. He had over 11,000 total yards, 88 touchdown receptions. And what's interesting, of all the NFL players in history with at least 600 catches, is 18.7 yards per catch is the highest of any wide receiver of all time. He was a perennial all-star for the AFL teams. And if you want to know about Don Maynard's greatness, you have to go back to the AFL championship game in 1968. That was the year the Jets would beat the Colts in the Super Bowl. They're playing the Oakland Raiders at Shea Stadium to see which team is going to go to the Super Bowl. With a little over 8 minutes to go, the Raiders take a 23-20 lead over the Jets, and it's really crisis time. The Jets have their ball at their own 20-yard line. Don Maynard comes to the huddle, and he tells Joe Namath, I can get a step on George Atkinson, the great cornerback for the Oakland Raiders. Namath hits him with a bomb, for long completion. And then on the next play, Namath hits Maynard again in the end zone for the go-ahead touchdown, and the Jets win. How respected Don Maynard was could be seen in Super Bowl III. He didn't have one catch that game, yet played a huge role in it because the Colts didn't know that Don Maynard, who was a lightning bolt, he was uncharacteristic. You didn't see wide receivers run as fast as Don Maynard did. He had tweaked the hamstring. Yet early in the game, as a decoy, they send him out for a long pass. So Don Maynard streaked down the sideline, but not at top speed, at 80 to 90% because he was injured. And the ball was slightly overthrown. Had Don Maynard not been hurt, he would have caught the long pass from Joe Namath. So the Colts had to respect him all game, that threat, that decoy, that Namath could go long to Maynard. And they had guys, on him, they double team him at times and so on, even though Namath wasn't throwing to him. And that was the greatness of Don Maynard, a 13-year career with the New York Jets, outstanding flanker. He was responsible as any of the Jet players for the success they had during that time which, you know, included that historic Super Bowl victory.
Yeah, Jack, that's a very solid pick, but I'm going to go with Harold Carmichael with the Eagles. He was there from 1971 to 1983 for 12 years, 4 times All-Pro, NFL receiving leader in yards and receptions for the Eagles in 1980, an NFL record catching passes in 127 consecutive games with 590 receptions, almost 9,000 yards. And a key for those 12 years was the 79 touchdown catches. When he retired, he was 7th all-time in TD receptions. At 6'8", he was a red zone target, but also a great athlete. And as a quarterback, Jack, you need that one guy, you know, who will make that catch in the end zone or on that third down to keep the drive alive. The thing that happened with Harold Carmichael is he didn't have the quarterbacks like Maynard had. He had, you know, his Ron Jaworski, the Polish rifle, came in. This is when his career really took off. He started as tight end because of his size, but they realized the athleticism he had would make him a great wide receiver. And even though he wasn't on the great teams that a lot of receivers were, not that the Eagles didn't go to the Super Bowl and lose to the Raiders, but he was the guy. He put fear in all defenses he played, no matter how bad or good the team was. Imagine today having a 6'8" receiver that could run a post or run a fly and still be there for those tough catches. I really believe Harold Carmichael set himself apart from a lot of different receivers we could have picked, Jack. We could have picked a lot of different receivers for this. I mean, the Patriots have had a few, some not played as long as others on the team, such as Randy Moss. We could have picked,
Mac, let's agree on this right now. We probably both would have picked Randy Moss had he not only played 3 years with New England.
Yes.
He was outstanding for the 3 years, but you need a little more than 3 years as a body of work. Like
I believe
had
that
5 years with the New England, we could have maybe looked towards him. But 3 years as opposed to the other Carmichael and Maynard, who each played 13 years for their team.
Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't quite match up.
And we could even go on with Stanley for the Patriots, who had an unbelievable career with the Patriots. I think he got well over 10,000 yards. But again, I mean, he was on teams that were not as great as the current Patriot teams of the current years were, where they had a quarterback like Tom Brady. And even Joe Namath, to a point, Jack, he could throw a great long ball. He had that quick release. He could get the ball out there very fast, beat a lot of blitzes.
Mac, I'm being very polite to you by letting you ramble on and on and on. You have no direction to what you're talking to. Harold Carmichael obviously was very good. You know, anyone who made it to the Hall of Fame is a great receiver. Never mind, it took him close to 35 years after he retired to be inducted, okay?
Right.
So he wasn't an all-time great by any means. He wasn't even the best receiver the Philadelphia Eagles ever had. That was Tommy McDonald, actually. Now,
yes.
Tommy McDonald played 7 years for the Eagles as opposed to Harold Carmichael's 13. Tommy McDonald was the smallest player in NFL history ever inducted into the Hall of Fame. Now, Tommy McDonald, you know, he caught 66 touchdown passes in 7 years as opposed to 79 of Harold Carmichael's in 13 years. So for Harold Carmichael, 6 extra years, he only caught 13 more touchdown passes. Tommy McDonald is the Eagle franchise leader with 19.2 yards per catch. He's a Hall of Famer, too. He made 5 Pro Bowls. He led the league in TD receptions in 1958 and 1961. In 1961, he also led the league in receiving yards. And in the 1960 NFL championship game, the only championship game in which the great Vince Lombardi lost as a head coach, that year, the Eagles beat the Packers 17-13. Tommy McDonald caught a touchdown pass in that game. So Tommy McDonald, to me, is the greatest Philadelphia Eagle receiver of all
Well, I
time.
mean, I
And
mean,
want to
you could
praise you for one thing, Mac. I want
you
to
could put
praise you.
you could put Mike Quick in there too as also having a little more. All I'm saying, Jack, is that when you are that much of a threat, that big a size, with not the great quarterbacks that a lot of these teams had. I mean, to put Maynard in there, I can't name another Jet wide receiver that was a legitimate. I mean, who are you going to say for a Jet receiver that you could put up against Don Maynard? I mean, there is no other one. So that's a very easy pick to me.
Well, George Sauer was a great receiver, but a different style. He would finesse you. He wasn't quick. He had great hands. But Maynard was that lightning bolt. Yeah,
Right.
this was Harold Carmichael, too.
Right.
He would take down the field. I'm thankful, Mac. I thought you were going to do something, and I want to praise you and compliment you for not doing it, because I was ready to trash your argument of why Terrell Owens was the best, so
Yes,
on. And,
yes. I mean, yeah. Well, Terrell Owens again to me is sort of like Randy Moss. I mean, he's San Francisco 49ers. I would think you would have to put Terrell Owens in that discussion maybe,
against
and you
Jerry
really could.
Rice, Mac?
I'm saying you would have to. You would have to. No, I'm not saying.
Listen,
I'm not
Terrell
saying.
Owens is great on the field.
I'm not saying he would have. I'm not saying Jerry. I'm not.
Terrell Owens.
I am saying I'm not comparing him anywhere close to Jerry Rice.
Okay.
I am saying he would be in the discussion with San Francisco rather than with the Eagles. And
Yeah.
I don't think you could even put him in the Dallas discussion.
No, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to push on to our next debate here, Jack, and that's we're going to go with the greatest third baseman of the locals. We're talking Yankees, Mets. We're talking the Red Sox. And we're also talking the Phillies. And I think there's only one third baseman that stands out amongst all these third basemen. And there are quite a few that you could debate. But it's got to be Mike Schmidt, Jack. And I don't know how you could say anybody else. I mean, 12-time All-Star, 3-time NL MVP, 10 Golden Gloves, 6 times Silver Slugger Award, 8-time home run leader, 4-time RBI leader, World Series champion, Hall of Fame, 2,234 hits with 548 home runs, 1,595 RBIs, slugging percentage, 527, OPS, 908, fielding percentage, 96.1. There are other great third basemen, Jack, but there is no other third baseman that you could even put in Mike Schmidt's class.
Okay, Mac, I admit I'm a homer, not actually hitting home runs. When I played ball, as a teenager and so on, I can't relate to the type of power that Mike Schmidt displayed. But by meaning a homer, I always look towards the local teams, especially the Yankees, and want to put someone in that slot. I would have loved to put A-Rod as my choice. Okay, let me say that being upfront. But we think of him more as a shortstop, before he came to the Yankees, to perhaps be in that discussion if we're talking about all-time best shortstops. The guy I'm going for, okay, the guy who I want to bat in his hands all the time would be another Yankee. Now, you're probably thinking, what other Yankee? Do you think no, not Greg Nettles.
No, you're not going Craig
Nettles.
Nettles.
Digging up into the past of another old timer. The biggest mistake I've made since I've been on this show, the biggest brain cramp I've had. We were talking about Don Mattingly a while ago about the 96 championship he missed. And I mentioned, Wade Boggs, he just came to the Yankees for a cup of coffee,
In
making
Danish.
it out like he was there one year. What was I thinking? I forgot. Like Roy Jones had that song, You Must Have Forgot, like how good he was. I must have forgot. Wade Boggs was a Yankee for 5 years.
Right?
5 years. How can I, I had a brain cramp. 5 years was as long as Reggie Jackson was a Yankee. We think of Reggie Jackson as being a Yankee, even though most of his years were with the Oakland Athletics.
Yes.
And Wade Boggs, let's start when he was a Red Sox, because this makes it beautiful, because we're talking about Boston, Philadelphia, New York, and he was with Boston So he had an 18-year career the way Mike Schmidt had an 18-year career. The last two were with the Devil Rays, you know,
Right.
at the time. And ironically, I don't know, Wade Boggs wasn't the sharpest dude, because when it came time to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, in that era when Wade Boggs got inducted, players could choose which team they wanted to go in. So despite 11 years with the Red Sox, 5 with the Yankees, 2 with the Rays, he wanted to go into the Hall of Fame as a Ray.
Right.
Now, I don't know what sense that made. Dave Winfield.
That solved an argument.
Because they gave him $1 million to go in as a Padre.
Right.
But it made, you know, whatever. But the first Wade Boggs, at the first 11 years of his career, were with the Red Sox. The first 10 of those, he hit over 300. First 10 of those. Then he had a bad year, hit 259. And the Red Sox think he's washed up. They let him go over to the Yankees. And what does he do? The first 4 years, he hits over 300 with the Yankees. And they win in the fourth year of the fourth of those years, they win the World Series. He was never a World Series winner with the Red Sox, but he was with the Yankees. His fifth year with the Yankees, he hits 92. He goes over to the Rays. For 2 years, he ends his career by hitting over 300. Now, you talk about Schmidt's power numbers. 548 home runs for his career. We won't even say what Boggs has as far as homers.
I think it's 108, Jack.
Okay. Oh, but let me tell you something.
Yes.
What if I told you that Wade Boggs was nearly the power hitter that Mike Schmidt was? You would laugh at me and
I definitely would
point to the homers. Mac, doubles and triples are power numbers. It's not only over the fence. Anything more than a single is a power number. And over the course of their 18-year career, Wade Boggs had 61 triples. Mike Schmidt had 59 triples. Okay, triples are a very rare sighting.
Have a lot to do with speed and off the wall, Jack. Come on.
Okay, doubles.
Right.
Mike Schmidt had 408 doubles for his career. Wade Boggs had 578 doubles. In other words, Wade Boggs had 170 more doubles than Mike Schmidt did in his career.
Right.
So he exhibited power numbers as well. I mean, Mike Schmidt, let me tell you something, was an excellent fielder.
One of the best.
Excellent fielder, but it's all relevant to your competition, the Golden Glove Awards. And you're not going to tell me that Mike Schmidt was as good defensively as Brooks Robinson.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Nettles.
Of course not.
Urshela was better defensively than Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt was a very good defensive third baseman. Not a great one, a very good one. Okay.
You know, Jack, listen. Wade Boggs was a great pure hitter. I can't take that away from him. But if you're talking about driving in runs, if you're talking about coming up and in the clutch delivering home runs, as Mike Schmidt did over and over again, and still had a decent batting average. I mean, how many more RBIs did he have than Wade Boggs?
Let me tell you, he had 61 points higher for his career. Wade Boggs, 267.
400 more RBIs, Jack. I mean, this is what baseball is about driving and runs. I mean, you have to set it up with a base runner. I understand that. Wade Boggs is a Red Sox to me. He always will be on the Red Sox. That would be his team.
It doesn't matter.
That would be. I agree. But not a New York Yankee third baseman. You can't put him ahead of Craig Nettles as a Yankee third baseman.
We're not talking New York here.
Right, I agree.
You got a Philadelphia guy, and you're holding New York.
You started out.
You could pick the three.
You started out to debate. You started out to debate saying you're a homer, and then Boggs was a Yankee for 5 years. He was a Red Sox like 11 years.
Reggie Jackson was a Yankee.
Well, I agree. Did I say Reggie Jackson was the best Yankee of all time? No, he was with the Oakland A's, in my opinion.
I'm not claiming the best Yankee. I'm saying
right.
The best third baseman of the three cities. I mean,
right.
Well,
I mean,
listen, he was a five-time batting champion, Wade Boggs. You know, Wade Boggs was a good fielder too. Wade
yes,
Boggs, Mike Schmidt was a little better defensively, but Wade Boggs
yes,
did win a couple of Golden Glove awards
yes, he
with the
did.
Yankees, ironically.
Yes,
You
listen.
know,
I'm not putting down Wade Boggs. I just don't think he's in the same class as Mike Schmidt. I'm saying Mike Schmidt, beside the batting average, fielding, home runs, RBIs. This man was awesome. Wade Boggs wasn't even in his class when it comes to RBIs and home runs and fielding. I'm telling you right now, there is no better third baseman. And A-Rod is a shortstop, and there's a lot of things I could say about A-Rod I'm not going to bring up. Listen, the best, we're saying the best third baseman of all time in these three areas. And you're saying Wade Boggs compared to Mike Schmidt. That's no comparison.
you get caught up in the glamour of the home run. Yeah, it's like it's like judging a beauty contest and seeing who is dressed the best. That's what the home run is. Someone puts on a fancy outfit. Oh, it's all glowing. But you want a bat in Wade Boggs' hands more than Mike Schmidt. He hit 61 points higher and walks. Their walks were pretty comparable to their career, but Mike Schmidt would be walked intentionally a number of times. Wade Boggs knew how to draw a walk. And Ted Williams, I believe he said that Wade Boggs was like just about the best pure hitter he ever saw. I mean, maybe he was a little partial because he said it when Wade Boggs was in Boston. But listen, I mean, give me either guy.
Well, definitely. But one question I think would resolve this debate. There's a man on first. You're down by 2 runs. Who do you want coming up, Mike Schmidt or Wade Boggs?
I want Mike Schmidt coming up if a man's on first. But let me tell you something, Mac. There are 2 outs and there's a man on third. And I'm 1 run down out to my last out of the game. I want Wade Boggs up there.
Good point. Very good point there, Jack. So 2 great third basemen. I think Mike Schmidt's better. Wade Boggs is a heck of a pick. So on to the next debate, Jack. We've got a very interesting one that you brought to my attention, and this really has to go back at not only about how we think about the history of the Jets-Colts game, the guarantee that was said by Namath, and he did win the MVP without throwing a touchdown, which was, I think, one of the only times that a quarterback that didn't throw a touchdown was given the MVP award. So when it comes to Joe Namath, what do you say, Jack? Is he the MVP of Super Bowl 69 or not?
It's funny about those games that took place then, these Super Bowls and the World Series. Sport Magazine used to give out a card to the MVP. And now, in this day and age, the players could buy 10. The players will be given the card, and they'll just give it away. I mean, in a lot of cases. Super Bowl III is going to be remembered mostly for one thing. Joe Namath guaranteeing the victory, okay? That's become a part of folklore here. Well, I guarantee it, and so on. And Namath was the glamour guy. He was the story of the Super Bowl going in as the lead-up. Broadway Joe, he wouldn't only be in the sport pages, he would be in the gossip pages and page 1, with his good looks, his fur coat, the big bonus he got, being an eligible bachelor, doing it called Broadway Joe Namath. He was really getting all the hype. Now, Joe Namath was a gunslinger in the true sense of the word. Football was different then. Joe Namath could throw 5 interceptions in a game, and he'll be starting the next week. The only one after him that kind of resembled Joe Namath was Brett Favre, would just, let it rip. But Joe Namath played a wonderfully controlled game that day, in which the Jets beat the Colts 16-7. He didn't throw any interceptions. I mean, his statistics weren't overly impressive. He went 17 for 28 on pass attempts, only 206 total yards. He didn't even throw a pass, I believe, in the 4th quarter of the game, even though the coach Weeb Eubank wanted to insert a pass play. During that time, the quarterbacks call the plays. You're not going to cut me short, Mac, are you?
No, go right in. I
Okay.
just got a couple of messages coming.
Okay,
Go ahead.
cool. You're not probably bored with my arguments. So let me
Not at all. Not at all.
Let me get to the meat and potatoes of it. The MVP of that game, without question, should have been Matt Snell. The Jets won 16-7. Namath didn't throw any touchdown passes. The Jets won because they controlled the ball on the ground. And the reason they controlled the ball on the ground and controlled the clock was because of Matt Snell. 30 carries for 121 yards, and he scored the only touchdown on that sweep to the left. Not only did he have 30 catches for 120 yards, he caught 4 catches for 40 yards on top of it. So that's 161 total yards. Of the Jet 43 carries that day with their backs, he had 30 of them, 30 of the 43. He also played a little special teams that game too.
Right.
And Joe Namath, he said one time, well, I got the MVP, but Matt Snell did all the work. And Matt Snell truly did all the work. That is one of the great Super Bowl performances of all time, what Matt Snell did in Super Bowl III by constantly beating up the Colt defense, just chugging a few yards at a time, over and over and over. He kept the chains moving, the clock moving, and he allowed Joe Namath to play a ball-controlled game and not have to open it up where the Jets could have made a mistake. And as a result, the Jets became Super Bowl champions.
Jack, I used to think the same thing about Joe Namath getting the MVP, because I really believe there were a lot of reasons the Jets won that game and not the Colts. I mean, Bubba Smith even said he thought it was fixed, the game, the Super Bowl, so that the AFL would win, so that they would combine the leagues together and have an NFC and AFC, saying that maybe Earl Morrall.
Had he done a little better job against Dave Herman, that may have helped the Colts a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's true.
Once.
That's true. But last I read in one of his articles, he did say he thought that Earl Morrall throwing those 3 interceptions, he didn't say they were on purpose, but he said that he was implying that maybe the game was fixed so that, they could have the combination of the NFC and AFC instead of the AFL, NFL. I don't believe that's true, but he did.
These conspiracy theories, I'm tired of them. I'm cutting in, because if there was any truth to it at all, we would hear something from someone else.
Right.
And the government would investigate. People would go to jail. These crazy conspiracy theories. All I'm saying, last night's game was fixed. It was scripted by Major League Baseball for Chapman to throw the ball at a player's head and then the player to get revenge on him with a game-winning homer. That's great for the ratings in Major League Baseball. So I think last night's Tampa Bay game was fixed. What I'm saying is utterly ridiculous, stupid, but that we hear too much of that. I'm sorry, Matt.
No, that's fine. I
had to cut in on Bubba's logic.
I had to throw that in because I thought that there were a lot of reasons the Jets won that game. I mean, I think Matt Snell, the reason why Matt Snell had such an explosive game is you brought up during the greatest wide receiver discussion that we had about the three local areas. And Namath won 17 for 28 for 206 yards. And back then, Jack, the quarterbacks called their own plays for the most part. During that game, Namath called all his plays from the line of scrimmage. There was no huddle. So the Baltimore Colts couldn't make the adjustments that they wanted to make. And I'm not saying Namath is totally responsible for that. I think that was a game plan that they had, because the Baltimore Colts had a great defense at that time. And I think that was that threw the Colts a little bit. I think what you said about, Maynard, being hurt, they didn't know that they had to either roll a coverage towards Maynard or double team him under and over the top. And that kind of took people away from the run game. Matt Snell had a great game. There's no doubt about that, running for the 120 yards, the TD and the 4 passes he caught. But again, I think there was a lot of reasons. I think the Jets defense played very well getting those 3 interceptions. I think that that primarily the reason why the
Four
Jets won that.
interceptions, as I remember, Matt.
4 interceptions. I recall the 3 that I saw, but okay, 4 interceptions. I'll give it to you. But the main reason for that was that Johnny Unitas was hurt. I mean, if Johnny Unitas was healthy, there's no way the Jets win that game. He went in hurt at the end of the game and still brought him down for a touchdown. He was really banged up. Earl Moore was a great quarterback in his own right, a fantastic backup quarterback, stayed with Shula for years. I think that for the offense to work, as a lot of people say today, the quarterback is always the leader of the team. He goes with the game plan. If Namath is calling his own plays, Namath is smart enough to know that the running game is going to work and keep going to the running game. To use Matt Snell. On numbers alone, I will agree with you. Matt Snell should have been the MVP. But there's something to be said for what Namath did to the Baltimore Colts defense with the way he called the plays. There's something to be said, again, about the Jets defense, and there's primarily something to be said about Unitas not playing. So I have no problem with Joe Namath being the MVP. He did lead the Jets on a fantastic ride. He did have a good game against the Colts. Not a great game. If Maynard was healthy, who knows? He might have thrown for 2-3 touchdowns. And of course, that's if and buts. He took what the defense gave him. He gave him the ball I lost my train of thought here. Yes, he gave the ball to Schnell, called a great game, used him as a wide receiver instead of going to Maynard. I have no problem with Namath being the MVP of the Super Bowl.
Well, George Sauer had a really good game, and Namath played a control game. He played to the game. I give him credit. He played to the game. He didn't try to open things up because the defense was playing really well and so on. And the interceptions, as I recall, was 2 by Randy Beverly, 1 by Johnny Sample, and 1 by Jim Hudson.
Okay.
And George Sauer, their wide receiver, even though he played a great game, what people forget, he fumbled the ball deep in Jet territory. So very early in the game when it was scoreless, the Colts recovered a fumble on the Jet 11-yard line. And then a ball, hit one of the Colt wide receivers. His name escapes me for the moment. It hit his shoulder pad, went high in the air, and Randy Beverly came down with the interception.
Yeah.
But what Matt Snell did, he was the workhorse.
Yeah.
He was the workhorse. You know what it reminded me of, Matt, what the two of them did? The two of them, for example, let's say they had a car wash business, just the two of them. Joe Namath would be on the outside getting the customers to come, talking to them. Matt Snell would be inside cleaning the car, getting the car spotless, and then the customers would want to come back later because they were happy with how their car was cleaned and all. But it was Matt Snell that cleaned it who did the work, actually.
Yeah.
Namath played great for the game. And as an emotional leader, the Jets, as the face of the franchise, I can understand why he was given the MVP award.
Right.
But if you want to look past the glitz, the glamour, the Broadway Joe personify, it was really Matt Snell who really was the workhorse in that game.
Yes. And I mean, you could give, there's no such award, but you could give the MVP easily to the New York Jet defense too, who played an excellent game. I mean, they were all over Merle. And even though Unitas did get in there late and score a touchdown, listen, Jack,
it was very minor.
I understand that.
Nothing on the ball. They scored 1 touchdown.
I understand that, but if Unitas was healthy, Jack, there would have been the Jets would not even have come close to beating the Colts, and I truly believe that.
Listen, I'm a big Jet fan, but I'll be honest about it. If the Colts were 13-1 that season, and they were heavy favorites, if they played the Jets on the regular 14-game schedule that year, the Colts would have won 9-10 times.
Sure.
Whatever number, but they would have beaten the Jets absolutely more than the Jets would have beaten them. And the Colts were a better team not that day, but they were a better team. And if anyone needs evidence of that, 2 years later, after that Super Bowl, no one remembers, the Colts had the same cast of characters, Unitas and Morrill, still the quarterback, the same players, okay, for the most part. And they were past their prime, the Colts. They were kind of the hill, yet they beat Dallas, with that Jim O'Brien kick, the
field goal
Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They won the Super Bowl 2 years after the devastating loss to the Jets. And the funny thing about that particular game, Unitas started. He got hurt during the Dallas game, the Super Bowl 2 years later. And Earl Morrall came in and I don't want to say led the Colts to the Super Bowl victory because Morrall didn't do much. There was a turnover, the lead to the game-winning field goal by Jim O'Brien of the Colts. But that could tell you how good the Colts were. Past their prime, a little bit of a shell of their former greatness, yet they won a Super Bowl 2 years later.
Yeah, and I mean,
they played the Jets twice that season 2 years later. And they actually beat them both games. It wasn't the same Jet team, though.
Sure, but and just a real quick note on Earl Morrall. I'm not putting the man down. The man was, in his own right, very good to a starting caliber quarterback. I mean, what he did with the Giants, what he did with the Colts, and especially what he did with the Dolphins in their undefeated year. Greasy got hurt early in the season, and he's the one that really put that the Miami team offense on his back and brought him to that perfect season until the playoffs when he had a little problem and they put Greasy back in. So it's nothing against Earl Morrall. I mean, he was probably, to me, the greatest backup quarterback that ever played the game and was a starting caliber quarterback and proved it a bunch of times. So,
well, that's a great debate for another time. The best backup quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
And there have been some good ones. Earl Morrall was a starter with the New York Giants.
Yes, he was.
And
Shula was smart enough to keep him when he left the Colts. He brought him with him to Miami and paid dividends during that perfect season run because he really was a quarterback during that season, not Bob Greasy, who got hurt a lot earlier in that year. So, Jack, our next topic, and this is another interesting one that you brought up. Contracts, incentives, bonuses. I mean, you have a lot of players out there today that not only get big contracts and some that don't. They have a lot of different hidden things, clauses in their contract that if they get so many tackles, score so many touchdowns, hit so many home runs, right, whatever the case may be, they get a little bit more money. And I believe, Jack, that when you play something where you get paid millions of dollars, to get a bonus for doing your job is a little crazy to me. Now, I can see in the private sector where, you're going off sales, you're competing with other restaurants on a smaller or other stores on a basis and free enterprise. But this is the National Football League. There's no other football leagues that are competing with the National Football League. There are teams competing against teams, but to me, the contract is based off what you do all year. My time is
You're done, Max.
I'm all done. I get to give it right back to you.
I think it's cutting into my time now.
But, Jack, I really believe that if this is what you're getting paid all that money to do, you're training all year to do this. There is no more. Once you sign that contract, nobody else is gonna come in and scoop you up while you're having that contract, unless there's certain circumstances. Why would you have an incentive if you're a pass rusher? If you get 10 sacks, we're going to give you another $1 million. That to me is ridiculous.
Well, I got to tell you, one of the funniest things I ever saw during a baseball game, and we enjoy listening to the broadcasters tell tales, the Yankee broadcasters, the Met broadcasters. We like certain stories. Well, Bill White was the Yankee broadcaster at the time. Bill White was an outstanding major leaguer for the first baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies and St. Louis Cardinals. When he played, he had 286 lifetime home runs. He was African American. He had Billy Martin between managing gigs of the Yankees in the broadcast booth doing the game with him. So Billy Martin Bill White had great chemistry with another Yankee broadcaster, Phil Rizzuto, and Billy Martin loved Phil Rizzuto. He played with Phil Rizzuto on the Yankee teams. They were good buddies. So Bill White and Billy Martin that day had unbelievable chemistry because Bill White kept egging Billy Martin on. It started as a joke. And then all of a sudden, Bill White is talking about bonuses that players are getting. It was new to the game. A bonus this, a bonus that. And you could tell Billy Martin, who was such a hard-nosed player, who played for love of the game, was getting madder and madder and madder. Finally, Billy Martin says sarcastically, the guy makes it to the team bus on time to get to the plane to the airport, and he gets a bonus. And so finally, Billy Martin can't take it anymore. So then Billy Martin kind of had a little fun back because Phil Rizzuto always used to call Bill White, White. Even though Bill White was an African-American, his last name was White. And Bill White loved Phil Rizzuto. So they had fun in the booth with that. So finally, Billy Martin snaps and he says, why does Scooter always call you White? To Bill White. And they had a laugh, but he pushed Billy Martin to the breaking point about bonuses to the point where even Billy Martin, after losing it, had to laugh how ridiculous he thought bonuses were. But they're not. They're not ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you why. It makes the player earn his money. A lot of times, players wouldn't have jobs if there wasn't a such thing as a bonus clause. Take any sport. Andy Dalton's a backup quarterback with the Cowboys. He gets a base pay of $3 million a year, but he has incentives. If he plays, he's going to get X amount. You can't sign a guy, a veteran player, who's been a starter, established, to a very low base contract, and then if he plays a lot, expect him to only get basically minimum wage for the league. You have to have bonus clauses in there that if he plays X amount, he gets it. I mean, that's in all walks of life. And you know what it's called in all walks of life? It's called overtime pay. Someone works a job overtime, they get paid time and a half. That's a fancy word for bonus, for putting in the extra time. So it's say in sports, it's a reward for good performance that exceeds so-and-so. It saves a team money and that they can offer lower base pay. The player doesn't feel cheated, who's getting low money, and all of a sudden he contributes a lot, knowing he could meet his bonus clauses. It gives them an incentive, the players sometimes, to do just a little more to meet that. It helps the owner maintain a salary scale. It eliminates a certain resentment, from the guy who's getting low money, gets certain achievements later on. It allows him to up his pay so he's not resentful about making less. It makes contract negotiations easier. When the player and the management are deciding how much he's worth, finally they decide, okay, we'll give you this amount, but if you play X amount and achieve X amount, you're going to make the more money. And it protects the team from a player being injured. Sometimes they don't want to give a big contract, feeling a player's injury prone. So what they do is give him a lower guaranteed amount, but he can make that money up if he actually performs on the field.
Jack, first, your comparison between overtime and incentive is that's just crazy. You work overtime because you're expected to work these amount of hours, whatever the amount of hours is set by law or by the company. That is, you're doing extra. When you're playing a sports profession, when you're a professional football player, when you get a contract, you are required to do this, this, and this. You're required to stay in shape. You're required to perform at a high performance level. You're required by your contract to do certain things as your position requires you to do. Now, if I'm going to sign Khalil Mack, who is supposed to be one of the best pass rushers in the league, as he is, and the reason why I'm signing Khalil Mack is because he puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback, I'm also going to give Khalil Mack more money for more sacks. That doesn't make any sense. That's why you're signing the man in the first place, as I'm signing a good quarterback, such as a Cam Newton, and I expect him And Cam, I shouldn't even throw in there because that's different circumstances.
Cam
And
is
why
a great example.
and why he got
That's
incentives?
low money
Why he got
incentives.
incentives about why he got incentives, Jack, is because he hadn't been in football for a while. Teams were unsure of what he could do, and he took the job with the Patriots, hoping that he'd get a shot at the starting quarterback. I think that was almost guaranteed because of the quarterback situation there. But them incentives are because they weren't sure of what Cam Newton can do and his injury. When you get a normal player that isn't injured, that has played, and you're signing him because of his job, of what he's done in the past, that is why you're signing him. I mean, why would you even sign
Most players don't need bonuses. It's not even an issue. I mean, look at certain rosters, certain players. It makes sense for your example of Cam Newton. That made all the sense why bonus is important. The Patriots weren't going to give him a guaranteed deal of a few million. They didn't even know whether he'd make the team when they first signed him. And if Cam Newton had been making, let's say, $700,000 a year right now, he had no bonus clauses, anything, how do you think he would feel? It would reflect poorly on him. Even New England, that looks to save money, would be humiliated giving him such a little amount. So I'm not sure what his contract is, but he can make a few million more, by playing. And, it still won't quite be market value. At least it's something that he can live with this season.
But that is that is not the norm, Jack. That is one of the examples of things that maybe where this can work. But when you're saying that all players should get is a good idea for all players to get incentives, I think that's a terrible idea. What you're telling the players is, okay, I'm going to sign you to a contract. Well, you said incentives are good, and that's like overtime where you're giving somebody extra because they're doing extra. So, I mean, if you're signing a man and you have to give him extra incentive money to do his job better, then he shouldn't be on the team to begin with. I mean, you are getting this running back, this quarterback, and for the most part, this wide receiver, this offensive lineman, you're getting him based off what his work ethic is, what he does on the field. If I have to give him another $2 million to get more than 10 sacks, or I have to give him another $1 million because he becomes the league MVP, to me that makes no sense. If he does it, I hired this man, I signed this man because of what his work etiquette, what his ethic is, and how good of a player he is. Not because I want to throw a bone to a dog that's already eaten makes no sense to me.
But you can never come to a viable agreement with certain players because you're not sure what they're going to produce. You want to sign them to your team, but you're not sure what they have to offer. Okay, how much they're going to play, even if they do make the team. So you throw in these clauses that if they do make the team and they do perform, that they're not going to be underpaid. Okay, and if they don't play, they shouldn't get the extra money. That's what the bonus clause basically is.
But you say that, and part of your argument is that it's good for players. I can say it's bad for players too, because right. I mean, listen. If I've played hard last year and I've set a record in stats for my team, if I blocked very well in open holes, if I ran with the ball very good, and you're going to sign me to a smaller contract than what I make, but I could have incentives that put me at the top of the league, how is that fair to me? I mean, suppose I do get injured. Suppose the line has a bad year. Suppose the team is in disarray. See, in that case, it doesn't help the player, Jack.
Well, it helps in certain situations, okay, where you don't know what the player's future is going to be with the team. And you can't offer him the contract that could be befitting the services he might be giving you in the future. I mean, obviously, DJ LeMayo, for example, he's a free agent. If the Yankees re-sign him, there shouldn't be any bonus clause as well. If you get 600 at-bats, you get an extra $500,000.
Right.
You don't need any of that nonsense. But if, let's say, a player like Gary Sanchez was a free agent, the Yankees don't know what to do with them. Let's say they want to re-sign him. They could say, okay, we're giving you $1 million a year as a guaranteed deal. But if you play 120 games a year, you get an additional $5 million. If you hit 30 homers a year, you get an additional $2 million amongst that. And you put in a bunch of clauses that if he meets all the clauses and they all add up, he gets the salary of a good starting catcher. And if he can't meet those incentives, he gets the low amount of money that the Yankees aren't taking that big of a risk. Now, if they couldn't put in those bonus clauses, they decide, well, we just can't re-sign this guy.
Well,
we just can't work. Yeah.
The only problem with that, Jack, is then you're letting the team, the manager, the coach decide whether you make that money or not, because he has the ultimate decision whether you play or not, and how many bats you get, and that your chances at making those home runs.
It's an issue. You're right. It could become a problem too. J Happ. What happened with J Happ? He has a clause in his contract. I'm not sure whether he met it for his big bonus for next season, that if he pitches X amount of innings, it kicks in. And J Happ was mad because it seemed at the end of before the last few starts where he finally got it together, they weren't pitching him as much.
Right.
And he thought it might be because they don't want to pay him the extra money. And Brian Cashman said, nonsense. He hasn't been performing.
Right.
And I can understand the team with certain players. They're not performing at the end and they don't want to play him.
Right.
Because they don't want to pay him the bonus amount that they would then be due. Then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes an issue. But you want to know how you solve the problem? Just do your job and do it well. Because if you do it well, they can't sit you down. They're not going to sit you down. Because even in that case, the teams understand they have to pay you the money. There's no justification for them not doing it. But some of these players with bonus clauses in their contract, they're not performing to meet those clauses. And eventually they do get sit down and then they get upset about it. But that's the deal that they made.
And the agents get upset about it, which is probably the primary thing. Yeah, I just think, Jack, and I guess I could agree with the part that there is a role for incentives in certain situations. But to me, if you're going to let an incentive inspire you to play harder, then you probably shouldn't be playing the sport to begin with. You should be probably playing high as you can. And when you play and you do a good job and your contract comes up, you're going to get paid. And so that's all I'm saying about incentives. To me,
incentives take place. You mentioned football before. They have that all the time. If if someone is on the roster by such and such date, a bonus clause kicks in.
Right.
And it's just, part of it. It's negotiated by both sides in good faith.
Sure.
I mean, and listen, take the players that have no bonus clauses in their contracts. They just have a guaranteed contract. Right. Players have been known once they get their money, all of a sudden they don't play as hard. They're not as effective for whatever reason, I should say.
Yeah, or until that new contract comes up.
Or what about the guys who are in their free agent year?
Yeah.
I mean, that goes on all the time. I mean,
I understand the mindset, but again, Jack, if you're a professional, if you want to play this game and you want to try to be the best you can be, which you're supposed to be at that level, I don't see where somebody paying you to do your job, in general, is the greatest of all ideas.
Mac, if you're told after leaving here, if you work X amount of hours, you're going to get a bonus, this and that, you wouldn't mind that bonus deal out there for you.
Yeah, I mean, but I think that's that.
Mac, if you put in an extra 8 hours a week, you make certain bonus clauses. It's
I think it's apples and oranges, but I do get your meaning, Jack. I really do. So next discussion we got coming up: Astros cheating scandal. Was it overblown, Jack? I guess you're going to go first and tell us, what do you think?
Sure. We had on a guest, Jason Tremblay.
Mike Tremblay, yes.
Mike Tremblay, I'm sorry. I'm thinking
that's okay.
Too much. Mike Tremblay. He has a beautiful hockey name,
Yes, yes, that's it.
11-year pitcher, 7 of them with Minnesota. Great guest you had. we brought up the Houston Astro cheating scandal, and he wasn't that offended by it.
Yeah.
And the problem with the outrage over the Houston Astro cheating scandal is how it was handled afterwards. I mean, because sign stealing, it's always been a part of baseball. The question is whether the Astros went a little too far, not whether they stole signs or not, whether that's a bad thing or not. And part of the problem has been one of the Astro players, Carlos Correa, the Astro shortstop, a wonderful player, but he's a complete idiot, a complete fool. Rather than keep his mouth shut and allow the situation to die down, every time he opens his mouth, he makes it worse. He makes himself look like a darn fool. But worse than that, he's putting his teammates at risk by antagonizing the opposition, keeping them upset at the Astros. He has the audacity to tell Cody Bellinger to shut the you-know-what up when Cody Bellinger was all upset about it and talking about it. He's trying to defend Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve. No, poor Jose Altuve, when he was holding his uniform, he didn't want it to get ripped off. He had a tattoo put on his chest. Real modest guy, that Jose Altuve. I'm being sarcastic.
Yes.
Right now, the Astro owner saying, well, we would have won anyway the World Series, regardless of the signs. That's like Mark McGwire saying, well, the steroid use didn't help him hit any more home runs. He would have done it anyway. That just upsets people. Gets them madder and madder and madder. Now, I'm not as offended by the Astros stealing the signs. The problem is they took it to another level. They're not supposed to be involved electronically with it. But do you think teams haven't been getting every possible edge to steal signs? Let's go back to 1951 when the miracle of Cogan's Bluff, when Bobby Thompson hit the home run off Ralph Branca, and Russ Hodges, the Giants announcer, was going, the Giants win the pennant, the Giants win the pennant, the Giants win the pennant. Later would come out a headline, the Giants stole the pennant, the Giants stole the pennant, because there was a camera in the center field, behind the center field fence, that supposedly was tipping off Giant players as to the signs that were being given by the catcher. And Bobby Thompson, even though he said he never got the sign then, so on, admitted he took some signs during the regular season. One of the Giant players, true or not, said Bobby Thompson knew exactly what was coming. Ralph Branca swore to his dying day that Bobby Thompson knew exactly what pitch was coming. Of course, they still have to hit it, true or not. Think of all the times runners get on second base. They're trying to peek in on the catcher and tip the hitter off what's going on. It goes on all the time. Third base coaches, they're watched very carefully. You don't think they're on film, so on. Even look at today. The catcher and manager pay a visit to the pitching mound. The pitcher can't talk to them openly. He's holding the glove over his face, and he's talking because people are trying to steal what he's doing. It goes on all the time. The Astros took it to a more advanced level. I don't think they fully realized what they were doing because, I mean, sometimes in pursuit of getting an edge, people tend to break certain rules. Look, jaywalking's illegal, technically. Jaywalking's illegal. If someone jaywalks and no cars are coming and so on, people don't mind. But if there's traffic, it's known, at that point, you try not to cross the street while it's red, let all the cars go by, and so on. So I think the Astros, did they take it a little too far? You could make that argument because technically you're not supposed to use electronics, but consider this. Everyone steals signs. The coaches keep changing signs all the time, and the managers and the teams, because they know other players try to steal signs. Catchers are constantly changing their signals because of their signs. And that's just the way the sign stealing has been a part of baseball, all along. And Mike Tremblay said it's fun, it's challenging, it's good. He likes coaches changing signs and this and that. And for me, I find changing signs a little distasteful. I wish no one would be looking. There was a funny story. I was reading a book that Don Zimmer wrote recently, and he was a third base coach for a while under Billy Martin when Billy Martin was a Yankee manager. And Billy Martin changed the signs for that particular game. And Billy Martin said to him, if I lean against the wall, that means there's no sign at all. So Billy Martin forgot, and he was leaning against the wall and giving Zimmer the suicide squeeze sign, and Zimmer was ignoring him. And finally, Billy Martin started yelling at Zimmer from the dugout, and then the opposing team was laughing because they knew what was going on. So, and Zimmer told him when he got back to the dugout, you told me to lean against the wall. And then Billy Martin said, oh, yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, I mean, I recall another story about Billy Martin going down, trying to give a sign for somebody to bunt the ball, and he couldn't get it, so he finally walked over to the batter, away from the batter's box, and said, I said bunt the damn ball. And everybody knew.
You still have to hit it.
Exactly. Well, Jack,
and
your opening on Astros cheating scandal was interesting because you almost argued with yourself the whole time because you said it's not a big deal, but it was a big deal. Listen, Jack, I'm telling you right now, the level they took it to, I don't think it was overblown. I think, as you said, teams have been stealing bases, signs, and from the beginning of baseball, to be quite honest with you, because they've just been doing it. It's been back since baseball began. But this was people in certain strategic places in the stadium videotaping it, sending to the phones in the dugout and in the walkway there, and actually not just trying to steal signs and figure what it was. They were actually taking the actual signs and sending it to the players. So it was a lot easier. It was a lot more strategic than it ever was. And it wasn't just one person or one camera. It was a bunch of other people. And if you think it's okay, I only got one word for you, and you kind of brought up, and that's steroids. Steroids was cheating. People took this to either heal faster, to get a little stronger, to get a little faster, and to heal quicker. We look down on that. We don't talk about we don't talk about Barry Bonds really as a home run hitting leader of all time, which he is statistically, but we don't count that. We don't let Mark McGwire, who should be in a Hall of Fame, go there. Roger Clemens pitching, there was rumors of him taking steroids, and it has stained him. So if that's overblown with what happened in baseball by suspending people that were involved in it and people not getting hired, then it's overblown not letting these guys into the Hall of Fame.
Let me cut in. I don't condone what the Astros did. It was wrong. It was flat out wrong. But sign stealing goes on all the time. It's wrong, but it goes on all the time.
I agree.
Okay? Let's try to give an example, and I'm not sure this is even the best example, but let's make believe students in school are taking a test, okay?
Right.
And someone has the answers before the test, and they know they could just slot it in. They somehow got hold of the questions. Flat out wrong, okay? Criminal, so on, if you want to say it's flat out wrong. But let's say all the other students in class can look over the shoulder at the person next to them and copy their answers.
Right.
Okay, they could cheat that way. It's all wrong. All wrong. What the Astros did was wrong, flat out. Okay, because it was a rule. You can't use electronics. But my thing is, players are constantly trying to steal signs. They've been hidden cameras all along. Listen, the Jets were paranoid about Al Davis, the owner of the Oakland Raiders, when they'd be having their practices. You as a football coach would know coaches would want to keep players out. They would be suspicious how someone could get their information. Playbooks in football were probably stolen on occasion. And signs, but to be more specific, sign stealing in baseball goes on all the time. Definitely. All the time. I mean, if it didn't go on all the time, the signs would be very basic.
Oh,
Okay.
I listen.
Complicated,
I
it's
agree. I agree for the most part. Everything you just said there, Jack. All I'm saying is that was it overblown? It wasn't just. It was players were involved, coaches were involved. They knew it was wrong. They knew how it was being done, and until there was an investigation, and this happened, and you see what happened. People got fired, and the reason why people got fired is because that they know the way they did it was wrong. It wasn't just somebody, trying to steal signs from second base. We're talking about using technology to change the complexion of the game and to hurt other
they
teams.
did a better job of stealing.
Well,
signs.
that's true.
That was
That's
the
very
problem.
true.
They
Very
took it
true. So,
another
what do you
level.
say? What do you say to the players that played against these teams, these pitchers that had a legitimate shot of winning the games and had that shot taken away because the whole team went along with it? It wasn't just a manager. Go ahead.
No, I'm cutting you off because I'm
Yes.
really mad.
I'm just saying, Jack.
Really mad.
I'm just saying, Jack, that I don't think it was overblown. I think if that's overblown, then you got to say the use of steroids of them not getting all of it is overblown. And that's a way of cheating. That's a way of getting playing better. So then that is also overblown. Is gambling on other teams, not being allowed to be in a Hall of Fame if you're gambling while you're a manager or a player and you get kicked out and you're not allowed to go to Hall of Fame. Is that overblown? I mean,
Matt.
this to me, the way they did it and the way that it was set up and the people affected by what happened there, I don't think it was overblown.
Mac, you mentioned the pitcher, how outraged they should be because the Astros use technology to steal their signs. If I'm a pitcher and there's a man on second base and I know he's tipping off his batter at the signs my catcher's giving me, shouldn't that tick me off just as much? He shouldn't be allowed to communicate with his batter what sign my catcher's giving me. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I could
be allowed. Yet the run on second base, if he communicated with the batter,
right,
him off, there's no rule against that right now, none at all.
I understand that.
He would be stealing the catcher's signs.
But what you're doing is you're taking one thing where the second base runner is taking one individual batter at that time and telling him, tipping him off to the sides. We're talking about strategically placed people in the stadium giving all the signs to all the players in the dugout, Jack. That's a little bit higher.
It's wrong. It is wrong. I don't condone it. Don't misunderstand me. What I'm saying, sign stealing is a part of baseball. The Astros took it to another level. Should they have been disciplined? Yes. Was the discipline strong enough? Maybe not. Okay? But my thing is, all this outrage, how awful what the Astros did, how terrible. When you look at all the sign stealing that takes place, it should be put in perspective. The Astros messed up. It was wrong, so on. But everyone is acting like sign stealing doesn't go on. They have to realize it's a big part of baseball. The
Always
Astros
has been.
Just took it they just took it a little too far.
And you notice that hardly any Astro players received any kind of punishment for what they did. In fact, as you said, came out and talked a lot of trash afterwards.
Well, none of them did. And Carlos Correa, I'm going to tell you what the commissioner, if he makes one more remark relating to that, he should be warned in advance. You say anything at all related to that scandal should be hit with a major suspension for antagonizing people, like a 30-game suspension to start next season. There should be zero tolerance with the Astros making any remarks on that. Part of the deal of not disciplining them, suspending them, you see them really talk about this thing.
And I agree with you 100% there, Jay. We got a little extra time. We're going to throw a little debate in there we talked about before.
I'm going to tell you one of the things that we're planning to talk about.
Well,
I don't want to start. We really want to save the best for last.
Yes.
Okay?
Because at the end of the show, we're going to give our little few words about a great Yankee legend, and we'll do that at the end of the show. So what we're going to do here, Jack, is this wasn't really up, and I didn't take no notes on it, but coming this Sunday, who needs to win the game more from the New York teams. We already know Buffalo's okay. Patriots, we don't know what's happening there. The Eagles will eventually get their act together, I
Not who
think.
needs to win, who we think is going to win a game.
Well, I would say who needs to win, because if one of these teams don't win, I'm going to go out of my mind. So Jets and Giants, take who you pick. Who do you think is going to win this week, Jeff?
Well, if you want to take it a week at a time, hypothetically, the Jets have a better chance, I guess, because they're playing Arizona and the Giants are playing the Cowboys. The Giants are playing the Cowboys in Texas, okay? And with that said, I think the Giants are going to win a game before the Jets do. And it might very well happen tomorrow. I mean, they're the Dallas Cowboys, America's team in name only. But their defense is awful. And this is it for Daniel Jones to have a breakthrough game. And I'm going to say something about Jason Garrett. If he's befuddled by this Cowboy defense, and especially since no one knows the Dallas Cowboys better than Jason Garrett, or should, for all the years he was their head coach, and it was just their last year. So it's not like he's been removed from the situation for long. If they can't have a good game offensively against this Cowboy defense, forget it. It's going to reflect so poorly on Jason Garrett going forward with what he has to offer. Daniel Jones and the rest of the Giants as their offensive coordinator. And I feel the Giants have been competitive against good teams. They played a very good Los Angeles Ram team in Los Angeles. They battled them very hard, okay? Yeah. Very hard. I think if it's not this week, I think the Giants will win. The Giants will win a game before the Jets. And also the Jets they have Joe Flacco starting as their quarterback. And Joe Flacco is terribly rusty.
I think it's more important for the Jets to win sooner than the Giants. I think that I don't really believe in firing a coach during the season, because I think that really
are we still on
messes.
The cheating scandal?
No, we're talking about the Jets right now. Okay. So I believe that it's a bad idea to fire a head coach during the year, but I think it's going to happen very shortly, because the Jets just don't even seem interested sometimes on the field. Their offense is doing nothing. Flacco's not going to help that along any. Their defense looks like it's running in slow motion. I think Arizona's going to have a huge game against them, especially with Kyler Murray there. They got a lot of speed on the Cardinals. The Jets really don't have a lot of speed on defense, so I think it's a big mismatch. The Giants, I don't know if they have a shot against Dallas or not, Jack. I think that their offense should play better. It's the fifth game. They better start playing better soon. The defense looks like it's going in the right direction for sure, battling a lot of decent teams this year and holding their own, except with the 49ers. That was just a throwaway game. I don't know what happened there. But I think it's more important for the Jets to win sooner than later, Jack.
Well, I'm going to tell you, the Jet management might not be intending to fire Adam Gase right now. They might be thinking, okay, it's a rough patch. We're going to stick with them. We like them. But losing wears on you. It really wears on you week after week. And if they get to 0-7, it might get to the point we can't take this anymore. And the only way we're not going to hear about this is by just replacing the coach for now. At least we're not going to have to be asked, is he still the coach? Get this criticism for hiring Adam Gase as the coach. So the Jets need to win more. The Giants, Joe Judge, it has a honeymoon period this year.
Sure.
No matter what their record is, no one is going to call for Joe Judge to be fired. They could be 2-14 this year. No one's going to call on him to be fired. Look, Bill Parcells, his first year as the head coach of the Giants, they only won 3 games.
Yeah.
3 games on his way. And Bill Parcells went into George Young, and he immediately nipped it in the bud, because George Young was thinking of maybe making a change. And Bill Parcells said, look, I messed up this year. I became too close with the players, too emotionally involved. I'm changing my ways of doing things.
Right,
and that impressed the GM, George Young, to keep him on. And look what happened. The rest, and Bill Parcells went on to be one of the great coaches in NFL history.
Sure. I think a lot of it has to do with the locker room, Jack. If you start losing the locker room, which I think Adam Gase has done, I think he's lost the locker room. If the Jets played a little competitive, I think they might. If they played more, not a little, a lot more competitive on all sides of the ball, they would consider keeping him on. But right now, it just don't seem like the Jets players are interested. And if you don't have an interested team and a team that's willing to give it all every week, that's when the owners and the GM, they really start taking notice. And the fans, of course, the fans watching, people not tackling, people breaking 80-yard runs and the offense not moving the ball. This is when the fans get really upset. I mean, they're upset enough you're losing, but when it looks like you're not even trying, that's when the fans start calling for a coaching change.
Well, let me tell you something. Adam Gase wasn't responsible for the Jets drafting Sam Darnold as their franchise quarterback, yet his legacy might very well be linked to Sam Darnold's because of what happened in the last game against Denver. Darnold hurts his shoulder, goes out to the locker room, and we thought that might be a season-ending injury. We didn't know.
Sure.
It's great that Sam Darnold came back and re-entered the game. We assume if he's going to re-enter the game, your franchise quarterback, that the Jet doctors, coaching staff, they cleared him to come back, that he was okay. Apparently he wasn't. That same shoulder is keeping him out of this week's game. Obviously was hurt, shouldn't have been back in the game. Shouldn't have been back in. Yet Adam Gase had him come back, or the doctors told Adam Gase he was okay. Someone's to blame on this. Someone is to blame. And if Sam Darnold's career's in jeopardy because of this injury, or it's a little more serious than we thought, Adam Gase might have to face the consequences for that. There's a funny case. Let me just detour a little bit to the West Coast. Maybe we should talk about this tomorrow. The LA Chargers, they're not the biggest topic of conversation. We can bring it up again tomorrow. We're talking about doctors mishandling players. And I'm assuming the doctors cleared Sam Darnold to come back.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor was given a shot, an injection that injured him badly. It was supposed to help his shoulder, I believe, or whatever.
Punctured,
Tyrod Taylor was the starting quarterback of the Chargers. He had to miss that game. He had to miss the game after. So Justin Herbert gets in, starts playing. Now the coach, Anthony Lynn, is saying that Justin Herbert's the starting quarterback going forward. So Tyrod Taylor lost his job because of malpractice, by a physician.
Yeah.
Imagine that lawsuit if Tyrod Taylor wants to sue because he was basically put out of action by the doctor through negligence,
Right. And that's
and
and he wouldn't be just suing the doctor. He'd be suing the Chargers because he's a team physician, Jack, and he's going to go after the big pocketbook. So that would be very interesting to see what happens there, whether he chooses to file suit, which I would imagine he will. I would think he would. And that's going to be a heck of a scandal there. With him going after the Chargers.
Well, how the Chargers handle this is very sensitive because Justin Herbert was drafted number 6 overall. So he was going to be the quarterback in the future. But Anthony Lynn, the coach, rather than just starting Justin Herbert off the bat, which I think he should have done, he's not only named Tyrod Taylor starter, but said Tyrod Taylor might be the starter next season too going forward. Now, whether he meant it or not, who knows? But those words could come back to haunt him. So if I were to charge ownership, a part of me says, I don't want the lawsuit. So what do you tell him to do? To sit Justin Herbert down and play Tyrod Taylor when he comes back to avoid a lawsuit? And what are you supposed to do then? Hope Tyrod Taylor screws up on the field so then you could then put Justin Herbert back? What an ugly situation.
Oh, you're 100%. You're 100% right. I think that Adams really did a lot of damage to Gase this year. Gase, they went 7-9, but when Adams started talking about, him not giving halftime speeches and him not connecting with the players, and I think that started the avalanche that is happening right now. So it continues, and like I said, Jack, I mean, once the team looks like it's not trying and not performing, not playing its best, at least competing, whether you win or lose, then things start getting really shaky. And if you lose that locker room, it's all over. And I think he's lost the locker room. And, I'm not in favor, like I said, of any coach being fired during the year. But in certain cases, if the team is not trying anymore, or there's decisions made that affect this kind of stuff, well, I don't know. I think Gase is living on borrowed time for sure. So.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about Whitey Ford, Jack. Give me your thoughts about Whitey Ford. I don't know if you actually saw him pitch or not.
Yeah, I did at the tail end of his career.
I didn't get that opportunity. My father loved Whitey Ford, and he was one of the great Yankees. So
just
if you could,
quick stats, Whitey Ford was a 10-time All-Star. He was the ace of the Yankee staff, predominantly the ace most of the years when they won 11 pennants, 6 World Series. In 1961, that historic year where Roger Maris hit 61 homers, Mickey Mantle 54, and they won that great home run race. The most valuable player on that team, or the best player, may have been Whitey Ford, who won 25 games and won the Cy Young Award. He led the American League in wins for 3 seasons. He was a major league ERA leader for a couple of years. He had 236 wins, 106 losses. So when you look at the plus ratio, absolutely outstanding. For while, he had a World Series record, over 33 innings, a scoreless ball. When you think of Whitey Ford, for those who didn't see him pitch, I'll name a more modern pitcher, and he's on the exact level of this man I'm going to name, Greg Maddux. Neither guy threw that hard. They knew how to paint the corners. When you think of the greatest Yankee pitcher of all time, it's a tough one, but it would come down between Whitey Ford and Mariano Rivera. You can't choose. One's a starter, one's a reliever. How do you compare a starter to a reliever? You really can't. But if you had to do it, and you said Whitey Ford was number 1, Mariano Rivera number 2, people might disagree, but no one's going to give you one of these. Are you crazy? And no way. They're not.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because that's how great Whitey Ford was. He was buddies with Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle thought he was really the driving force behind the New York Yankee success. Elston Howard gave Whitey Ford the most fitting nickname. He called him the chairman of the board. Okay. Something about Whitey Ford, he was an executive pitcher. Okay. I mean, if ever a guy knew the art of pitching, it was Whitey Ford. He didn't have that overpowering fastball, but his placement was just like off the charts. I mean, just off the charts. And when you talk about greatest Yankees of all time, I mean, he was in the top 10. He was in the top 10 greatest Yankee players, in history, probably in the lower half of the top 10. When you talk about the greatest Yankee pitchers of all time, you can make an argument that Roger Clemens was slightly better. Okay, you can maybe make that argument, but Clemens didn't have that Yankee career. And Whitey Ford holds the most wins of any Yankee player in history.
Sure.
236. He could have had more. Casey Stengel, for a good part of his career, tended to take Whitey Ford out of certain games, a little bit earlier. But Whitey Ford, his other nickname he had was the Master.
Right.
Not only the chairman of the board, the Master. Just phenomenal pitcher. And he was as important to the Yankees' success, their dynasty, during the time he played in the 1950s and 1960s, as much as any other player.
Yeah, and I agree with. I've seen the old clips of him. I've seen, the World Series wins and Yogi Berra, jumping on him, and after that game he pitched. I mean, I like I said, I never got the honor or the privilege to watch the great Whitey Ford for the Yankees pitch, but I know all about him from my dad and my grandfathers and the people that really followed the Yankees, and even people that didn't follow the Yankees thought that Whitey Ford was one of the greatest pitchers of all time. And everything comes to an end, Jack. But some people leave behind bigger legacies
Well, he
than
was
others.
91 years old, so he had a good run.
Yes, definitely. So we pay a little tribute to him today. Thanks, Whitey, for all you did for the Yankees and for baseball, really. So we got 1:55 left on the clock, Jack. Something technical happened where we couldn't get the doctor on today. I'll fix that after the show is over sometime to make sure that don't happen again. But I do got a quick thought of the day, and I'll try and get this in before we end it. And it's mainly about, Jack, the old discussion, who's better, in different eras, the old versus the new. And when people say or compare new players are better than olders because they're bigger, they're faster, and stronger. And for the most part, that's true. But they definitely weren't, for the most part, tougher. Back then, most players had no job during these certain eras, and in the offseason to support themselves and their family, they had to go to work, and they had no training year-round. There was no workout facilities, no personal trainer, nutritionists. The fields were, no designed fields. They played mainly on the baseball fields that were grass and muddy. There were no specialists for the pass rush. There were no on-field medical crews, no X-ray equipment in the stadium. There were no rules to protect the quarterback like they have today. The wide receivers coming over the middle. The player played unless they couldn't walk. So if you took the average player from then and gave them all the stuff that I have today, and all they had to do was concentrate on football, I think that most of even the average players could definitely play today, and probably some of them could be very good and maybe flourish. How many yards would Jimmy Brown have if there were 16 games? How many more yards would Otto Graham or Johnny Unitas have if they were protected in the pocket and the receivers couldn't be touched? How many receptions would Steve Largent have or Fred Biletnikoff if they could come over the middle without fear of getting their head taken off by Jack Tatum or even Ronnie Lott? The real question to me, Jack, is would Tom Brady or Drew Brees or some of these great wide receivers have been better back then under those circumstances? How long would they even have lasted? Would they have even wanted to play under those conditions? I don't know if Odell Beckham Jr. or Amari Cooper would be willing to go over the middle like they did back then when you had Jack Tatum or Ronnie Lott waiting for you, waiting to punish them. I'm not just hit them, but punish them. So to me, I hate the comparison, but I can't just stand back and let them say, well, they're bigger, they're stronger, they're faster. There's reasons for that. And there's reasons why they're a little bit more better. But tougher, Jack, could, the players of today go back then under them circumstances with the same kind of training, the same conditions? Could they compete back then? I don't know.
The players back then, if they were playing today, would have been bigger today. That's human nature. They would have been bigger. We were talking wide receivers before. Don Maynard, Lance Allworth, Otis Taylor. They would have been great receivers today.
Sure.
No ifs or buts about it. And you might say, well, the player's a little bigger today, but the game isn't as physical today. You can't pile on. You can't give them the extra, hard hit. You can't do it today the way you did back then. And I mean, that's one of the things about eras like we think about all the time. And what used to drive me a little crazy is when I heard one telecast with the NBA, Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson was saying, well, outside of Wilt Chamberlain, the old-time players couldn't have competed in the modern NBA. But meanwhile, they would talk about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson being all-time greats. And I'm thinking to myself, old-time players around when Wilt Chamberlain played, I recall Willis Reed giving Lou Alcindor fits and outplaying him at times. Isn't Willis Reed an old-time player from 1970 who played in the Bill Russell era, who got outplayed by Bill Russell? yet could outplay Kareem Abdul-Jabbar some of the time. So these guys and Magic and Bird only came 6 years after that old-time Knick team won their last championship. So are you telling me is that when they became modern players?
Yeah, right,
Okay.
right.
And
I mean,
1986 Chicago Bears, you tell me they're not going to kick the rear end of anyone today?
Right. I
Okay.
agree, Jack. I agree. So that was my quick thought for the day. Tomorrow, join us for our football show where we'll have fantasy football expert Anthony Servino, and we have a special guest coming in, the announcer of his own podcast called Sportscope, and we'll have him on tomorrow to talk about NFL. Have a great day, Jack. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Mac.
And we will see you tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Have a great day. And we'll see you tomorrow, Jack.
Yeah.